Chris Speaks.
Okay, let me
Chris
click the
Speaks back
old.
here today with Brandon Mosley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast, and we got Representative Mack Butler back with us today. Representative Butler, it's been a pretty newsworthy week. So let's get into the PSC thing. There was a bill that was introduced that was going to make PSC members um, appointed instead of elected. So, and then all of a sudden we don't have that bill anymore. What put the brakes to that?
I'm not exactly, it probably was several components. I was opposed to that bill from day one, the minute I heard about it. Just never want to, remove the vote from the people. The PSC definitely needs some help. We're not getting the job done currently, but I think with some simple legislation, we could do legislation to mandate the hearings that they haven't had since 1982. We are the highest in the region, third highest in the nation. I think we're 30-40% higher than TVA. Tells you there is a problem. The power company is recording record profits. So we definitely need to do something. I did not think that was the answer. Um, the bill did not move in the Senate like I think leadership thought it was. So maybe that was the issue. Um, when I got to the State House Thursday morning, I started hearing about a recording that the power company lobbyist was on. That might have been the issue. I also started hearing that support was waning for the bill in the House. So we got there Thursday morning and it was no longer on the calendar. It's healthy to have discussion and debate. I think the bill moved far too quickly. We need to dig into everything, and then most importantly, as a representative, I work for the people back home, and I need to give those people back home time to weigh in of what their thoughts are on the issue. But the foot was on the accelerator, and I'm not exactly sure why. And I personally hope the bill is dead for the session. I don't know that that's the case.
Um, Representative, and this had been a rather dull, uneventful. I mean, probably the biggest thing happening was we're going to execute child rapists, which I don't think anybody objected to.
Right.
Um, and then all of a sudden we introduced this, and I don't know about other outlets, but articles about this are my highest rated news things here in the last week by a bunch.
Yeah, I would agree. This touched a nerve. We're hearing from people every day that are struggling to pay these high utility bills. If we're going to recruit industry and jobs to Alabama, energy costs need to be as low as they possibly can. And that's why I think take the bull by the horns and let's leave the elected Public Service Commission and just implement the hearings. I think that would be pretty simple to do.
Representative Butler,
Nope.
you said that you didn't think the. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you fix say something else?
No, I was looking at my cell phone was ringing. That.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Sorry about
You
that.
said that you didn't think that the Public Service Commission was getting the job done a while ago, or so do you think?
Yeah.
And we did this. You mean are they letting the voters down by not having open rate hearings?
Yes, I would absolutely say so. The power companies recorded record profits, and the hearings would be healthy. I think 1982 is the last time we had one. We're all about anybody making a dollar, but we need to. Something is up that the reason we are so expensive just right here in the region. The Southern Company, you can just look to Georgia. They're paying less than we are. We're paying over 16 cents a kilowatt hour. And just to tell you what a kilowatt hour is, that's a 100-watt light bulb burning for 10 hours is 1 kilowatt hour. Just to give that clarification to your viewers. And when you start adding up all these kilowatt hours, it gets into some big money.
If let's say there was a branding corporation and it was looking to site a plant somewhere, Alabama's got a 5% corporate income tax. It's got a 5%, individual income tax. Now I know you can deduct the federal, which makes it effectively like a 3.6 or something like that. but it's still higher than 0% like you have in Florida and Tennessee. And if you add higher power rates here, doesn't that put state recruiters a little bit in a jam,
It puts us
especially
at
if
a
you get outside of
disadvantage.
the TBA zone?
Yes, it puts us at a disadvantage. We've got a mega site right here in Etowah County that, it's not if, but when. Energy cost is going to be front and center in that debate when someone does come. We think, we're going to have something sooner than later, something big there. But energy costs need to be reined in. And if with these hearings, just laying it out there, let the people see what is going on. Nobody is opposed to them making a profit and returning profit to their shareholders, but it needs to be within reason. And they're reporting record profits. That's just a fact we hear about daily. People call me and tell me what the CEO of Southern Company makes, what the CEO of Alabama Power makes. But the rate hearings need to be had. And that was one of the components of the controversial bill. I've said, why don't we just do just that? The legislature created the PSC so we can absolutely go in there and tweak it. Because I don't think what we've got now is working. There are some really talented people that are running for that seat. I think there's no need to fear any of the candidates that are running, the ones that I've heard of, at least that I've met on the Republican side. But we are all supposed to work for the people back home and be their voice in Montgomery while they're making a living and raising their babies. And I try to be in tune and do just that. I heard from so many of the people I work for, and they were 100% opposed to that. I did not have one single person say, Mac, I think this is a grand idea. Let's run with it. It was quite the opposite. So that's why I've been opposed to it from day one. And I'm hoping that legislation is dead for the session. Typically in an election year, it's a short and sweet session, non-controversial, but we have kind of opened up a can of worms with this.
Representative Butler, the last few election cycles start with 2022. We've seen Commissioners Oden and Beaker get forced into runoffs. 2024, Commissioner Kavanaugh, Robert McCollum received 40% of the vote for her. Do you think the power company was behind this because they feel like Beaker and Oden's in trouble in this election?
Well, if you listen to that audio tape that's out, I would say they were 100% behind this. It doesn't look good for them, just being honest.
Changing the topic a little bit, I know you represent Etowah County,
Yes,
and
sir.
your state Senate district was a three-way between Jesse Battles and Amy Minton challenging incumbent Senator Andrew Jones.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, the Alabama Republican Party steering committee removed Jesse Battles from the ballot. What's your understanding of that situation?
Yeah, I think it was very unfortunate. I know Jesse, and he's a friend. I'm friends with all three of the candidates, and we've stayed out of the race and staying neutral in it. But he's a very sharp young man. Exactly what we need in the party. Him and his wife both are just very sharp, articulate people. And his issue was in the 2018 cycle. He had worked for another candidate that opposed the Republican, and so that is what got him removed. Those are kind of like grand jury investigations. We don't know everything that goes on in those meetings, and I don't know what the vote was or anything like that. But the question I've asked is, at what point do you get salvation and forgiveness? Is it, I know the party rules call for 6 years, and we really thought he was okay because it was outside that window. But I learned that that's not the case. They can actually go further than that. But I'm wondering, at what point does salvation come? You cut me and I bleed Republican, but at some point, do we offer salvation and grace? Even to someone that opposed a Republican. Jesse's no Democrat, absolutely no Democrat. He did mess up years ago, but his grandfather was on our local committee for many years. I served with him. He's gone to glory now, but I don't know what all went on in there. I guess one of the biggest disappointments that people have voiced to me is they wanted the people of Senate District 10 to make that decision. And the party elders, I'm sure they absolutely followed the bylaws and followed the attorney for the party and did what they felt was the right thing. It's just sometimes you're disappointed with the outcomes. Is just a few years ago, the same thing happened up here in this race, and I felt the same way then. As I wanted the voters to make that decision at that time as well.
President Butler, with them going back, 8 years, and like you said, when are we going to draw the lines? It's not a witch hunt because there were so many people in the Republican Party now that used to be members of the Democratic Party.
That is, and the day of party switching is really over, I believe. And I think the goal now that we've come to dominance is to make sure we're getting quality candidates, good Republicans, and we all know people that have squeaked through that nobody has filed a challenge on. And the party, even locally up here, is such a different party. When I ran for the school board in 2002, I was the only contest in the entire county the Republicans won. And you look at today, the only contest you're going to win, you're going to have a R by your name. But that wasn't the case back then. So we've come a long way. So back then, we granted salvation a lot easier, at least I know on the local issue. Like I said, I bleed Republican. I support our platform. What made me Republican before I knew what I was, I'm pro-life. My mother raised me to be pro-life. My first election, Connie and I, my wife, we came to age 1984. I voted for Ronald Reagan. But at that point, I really didn't know what I was. I knew I was immensely pro-life, and Reagan was pro-life. And then as I learned about the platforms, but our platform is night and day to the Democrat platform. No party is perfect, but the Republican Party identifies with my values, and I believe the values of most Alabamians, So anyway, I was, when I ran for the school board, I had people tell me I could not win because I wasn't a Democrat, and they wanted me to run as a Democrat, and I just laughed and said, I'm no Democrat. I could never support the party of slavery, the party of the Ku Klux Klan, the party of abortion. I could never support. That's why I am a Republican. If you cut me, I bleed. I'm the second longest serving member on our local committee. Senator Roy Smith, that's I think 93 now. He is the longest serving member, and I'm the second. I've been on the party since 1994. I'm a longtime member on the state party, and Connie and I, we have opened our home, our hearts, and our checkbooks for Republican candidates for decades.
Representative, I know last year, we
Yes,
had
sir.
a Ten Commandments bill that passed the House pretty clearly,
Yes, sir.
and then it got, you know, lost in the mess that happened up in the Senate that last week. How is that bill moving this year?
Well, this time it is moving forward in the Senate and going to come to the House. Senator Keith Kelly is working with Representative Mark Gidley, and I believe that bill will be signed into law. That one, several of us went to Faith and Family Legislative Conference in Dallas this summer, and that piece of legislation came up, and there were representatives there, legislators from 33 states, and people were asking us why couldn't we get that through the legislature. They said, "Don't y'all have a majority?" And I smiled and said, "We actually have a super majority." But it apparently wasn't a priority. The House did pass it last time. It got lost in the Senate, but this time the Senate is passing it and doing good work with it, because I saw the headlines just recently. I can't remember if it passed the floor, but it did pass a committee at least. So Senator Kelly's got it moving. So I'm pretty confident that one will move. But so many things like that are important to the people back home that we work for. Just to give you, most people don't know this information, but public school began in the church. The first teachers were the pastors. They were the most educated person in the community. And the term Sunday school This is a fact, comes from school being taught at church on Sunday. The kids were working 6 days a week. They couldn't read the scriptures. And the very first textbook was the Holy Bible. The New England Primer, used from 1690 to 1930, 240 plus years. If you ever, I have a photo reproduction. It is full of scripture. Every single founding father learned to read from the New England Primer. And now there is so much animosity, against Christianity. But with the Lemon test being overturned because of Coach Joe Kennedy, we can do a lot of things that have a historical precedent. So the Holy Bible, the Ten Commandments, even a manger scene in the public square, if there's a historical precedence, it's 100% legal. The Supreme Court's ruled. But nobody seems to really be aware of this. So the Ten Commandments is something simple that we should be able to move as a legislature.
President Battle, back to excuse me, Butler, back to Jesse Battles. Does he have any recourse?
No, sir. The party is in charge of primaries, and there's no recourse in this. I've spoken to him last night and this morning, and he is still on task. He's going to stay involved in the local party. He ran this time for the local committee with no questions being asked of him. So he's going to be on our executive committee. He's going to stay involved, and I think you'll see him pop up later down the road. He really ran a strong race. It puts it now to two candidates, and it's up to the people to decide. We wanted the people to decide between the three candidates, but we've got to trust the people to make the decision. But I do think Jesse is a class act. I spoke to him last night, and I'm sure he was disappointed, but he's not dissuaded from the Republican Party. I know people were wanting him to do a write-in and independent and all that. If you do any of that type of activity, you're opposing the nominee, and you sign a pledge to support the the platform and the nominee of the party. And I have confidence he's going to do just that. But I do think he's someone we're going to hear from later because he really is a sharp young man. And his wife works for Senator Britt.
Earlier this week, I think Representative Pringle carried a bill that passed the House that would allow appointing authorities, whether it be the governor, the Speaker of the House, or the pro tem, to remove people they appointed for cause. If it's just not working. What was the impetus behind that bill?
I'm not sure what exactly was, but a lot of these boards, I know we have a problem with people showing up and having a quorum. I've been appointed to three state boards over the years, and it's tough if everybody shows up, you don't have a quorum to get the work done. But I know the governor had to remove her one of her appointees on the state library board for going against her wishes. So I do think that's needed. There's so many boards, agencies, and commissions that appointments are made, but so many times they can't work because people don't show up. So they need to be able to find people that will serve and do the job. And life happens, and things change where people can't sometimes make it to the meetings. But it's tough when you're coming from all over the state to meet and do the will of the people, and you can't conduct business for lack of a quorum. So that would be my gut feeling is the main reason for it.
Representative Butler, do you think are there any other bills that you think are of importance that people should know about that's coming up in this session?
There are so many bills moving. There are hundreds of bills, and I kind of you get caught in your own world. What's in your committee? People will call me and say, "How about bill number so and so?" And I was like, "You don't have to tell me what it does," because we can't remember the numbers for all these hundreds of bills. And if they're not in our committee, we really haven't dissected and even looked at them till they come on the calendar for the floor. But there's a lot of fast moving legislation that's a lot of it is non-controversial. There's always a few bills, but election years usually are pretty smooth.
This week, I think Tuesday, the Alabama immigration justice people held their rally. I think they're opposing like 5 or 6 bills. Um, I know we all sort of feel for folks that are here, whether they're here illegally or legally or whatever.
Right.
Do they need to do a little bit better job organizing? I mean, they show up with, the red t-shirt with the fist up in there, and, it's like, it's so confrontational that sometimes I think they do a good job organizing, but they're not as effective as they could be with whatever it is that they're pushing.
Yeah, we are one of the most generous peoples on the planet. But could you imagine if you showed up in a foreign country protesting and fighting and kicking and screaming, demanding, waving your flag, not speaking their language? We expect people to assimilate when they come here and actually become Americans and share our American values, which has taken place for many years. But here lately, it seems to be the opposite, and that doesn't get you much grace and love and support when you come here and do that, where you're real in your face. That's not the way to do it. There is a legal route they need to go through, but so many children were brought here on their own. I mean, through no act of their own. They were brought here as a child, or maybe they were born here. But if you and your wife go to Mexico and she's pregnant and has a baby while you're down there, do you think that baby is going to be a Mexican citizen? Absolutely not.
No.
So, I mean, some of these stuff is just so insane, the nonsense that we have been taken advantage of for so very long. Look at our veterans. You see homeless veterans, and then we'll see illegals getting everything under the sun. That hurts when we owe these men and women such a debt, and they're not getting services, but we're tripping all over ourselves to get to illegals to take care of it. Um, so yeah, it's not a good thing when they're confrontational. They're welcome to come. It is the people's house, but they need to behave and be polite.
Representative Butler, and the bill that's passed, I think the governor just signed about putting child molesters to death. Do you
Yes.
know if it's going to be something like a murder where they have like 30 years of appeals to go through, or is it going to be something more quick?
That's been a problem always with the appeals process. I would hope it would be quick, and the goal of this legislation was to get it before the U.S. Supreme Court because we feel like with the more conservative court that we can get this upheld. And that's the purpose of a lot of bills that we have passed over, like all the pro-life bills we passed of, was to try to get one before the U.S. Supreme Court. Back in, I think it was 2016, I was a House sponsor for the dismemberment bill. Second and third trimester abortions are done through dismemberment, which is a barbaric procedure.
Yeah.
They literally remove the arms and legs of the child. And the whole purpose that we knew the federal judge would do just what they did. They would block it, but it was try to get it before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, it takes 4 justices to sign on, and they refused to sign on to that. But thankfully, not long after that, just a few years, they did hear the Mississippi case. Abortion is America's biggest sin. It is absolute murder. We know that baby has its own heartbeat, its own DNA, has its own fingerprint. That is a living, breathing person. And even in Alabama, we've still got a problem with abortion pills, coming into the state that that we're planning to try to address and stop.
Earlier, the House passed, I think, Representative Reed Ingram's bill, which
Mhm.
increased the penalty substantially if you try to elude the police and have car chases.
Yeah.
Um, how costly is it for the state and local authorities when you have to chase somebody, 120 miles per hour through the city? They're trying to elude to keep from paying paying a fine or getting arrested for something we know they did or they know they did. Um, where's the status on that legislation?
I really don't know, but Reed's one of my absolute favorite. I mean, he's rock solid conservative, does a great job. But there's been so many cases. There was one recently. I think it was up maybe around Morgan County where there was a fatality in a police chase. And And you're right. They literally run for all sorts of reasons. There's been discussions. I know some departments have a no chase policy unless they know it's a felony, but there are people that will run literally for anything. But I would have to track on that one. That's not one I've been following. But I do think it's a good piece of legislation.
I don't get that because they're going to get called eventually. I mean,
Yeah, if you get the information, they're absolutely, you can't outrun that radio in the police car.
um, can you tell us about the gaming bill?
I know there's been one filed in the Senate. I don't think it will ever see the light of day.
Okay.
This session was not going to be to deal with gambling. I can tell you this: the overwhelming number of people of our state would like to vote on a lottery. They're they're wanting a lottery. I haven't had anybody ask me for casino gambling, but with the tribe, they would be able to go up one and would have table games and things. But you know, I think now we've in the House have passed, I think, two or three times over the years, and it's died in the Senate. The last time in the Senate sponsor of the bill actually killed the bill. So, I'm no proponent of gambling. The House always wins. I believe in hard work, but I believe you have the right to do what you want to with your money. And to give you a little bit, tad bit of history that most people aren't aware of, did you know? Do you know the history of the lottery in America? Pretty fascinating. Yes. Our roads, bridges, churches, schools were all funded by a voluntary tax called a lottery, but also the Revolutionary War was funded by a lottery. The most sought after lottery ticket you can own is signed by none other than the father of our country, George Washington. And when I learned this years ago, I was sharing this information with my dad, and he goes, "I know that." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, it was on Pawn Stars the other night." A guy comes in with a lottery ticket signed by George Washington. Of course, Rick Harrison on there gives the history of it. It was fascinating, but it was a voluntary tax that took place. So I'm not offended by you doing what you do with the dollar you earned. And if you want to do that, it is a voluntary tax, and all of our border states have a lottery, and our citizens keep going over there and funding their lottery, and I'd be perfectly fine if those dollars stayed here.
Representative Philip Ensler, I think last week, Thursday, introduced a simple lottery bill.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that one.
Yeah, that just has dropped. That he said that he's for the other kinds of gambling, but when you do that, it makes the bill much more complicated, and then there's all kinds of issues with who gets to do it and who doesn't get to do it, and what kind of gambling.
Sure. And I'm gonna be honest with you, we have gambling in Etowah County. We have charity bingo. It was legalized many years ago. The representative at the time was named June Bugg. Sweet lady, I actually knew her, but she had carried it. So there's a hodgepodge of things like that all over the state that are actually legalized gambling. But our charity bingo is gambling. I don't think there is any appetite for any gambling legislation this session. I don't have a primary, but a number of people do. And I think most of the legislature would like to do the business of the state and get back home so they can do a little politic in here. May 19th will be here before you know it.
Mr. Butler, do you have any opinion on the removal of Dean Odle from the ballot?
Yeah, it's 100% in the bylaws. As I understand, he did, was it a write-in?
Yeah, he lost the primary, and then he urged his supporters to write in his name for governor in the general.
Yeah, that's the sore loser rule, and you're opposing the nominee. And I'm just certain when you qualify, you're pledging to support our party platform and the nominee. And there's just no place for the sore loser. I've lost before, and I voted for the Republican nominee 100% that beat me. That's I'm a Republican through and through, and I had people encouraging me to do the same thing. Sorry, my cell phone's ringing, but but yeah, so they followed the bylaws, and that's, you know, they did what they were supposed to do, and it's not always popular to do that.
We've had, it seems like 8 years of very steady, continuous increased growth year after year after year.
Hmm.
This year, it looks like revenues, they're still strong. We're not in a recession or anything, but it does look like the growth is slowing.
It's a little bit of a stall there. Um, and every year you're going to have, cycles. We're going to be positive. I really think we're poised for tremendous growth in our state. I think right here in Etowah County, like I mentioned before, we've got a mega site. The city of Gadsden, Rainbow City, Atala are doing incredible things. Um, Here very soon, we've got a huge development going on the Coosa River. In Etowah County, we've got a beautiful river runs right down the middle, and we have Nakalula Falls. Um, Tourism here is at an all-time high, and it's going to continue to grow. We're having the city fathers are working on becoming a walking city. We're going to have more festivals, more trendy shops, more eateries. There are some really great things on the horizon that are going to take place downtown Gadsden. They've got plans for where City Hall is being a hotel, being an incredible development there with maybe rooftop restaurants, bars overlooking the river. Life was on the steamboat back in the 1840s, was on the river when the steamboat was the highway there on the river. And literally life began right there where City Hall is for our community. And we're going to see, I think, growth go from there tremendously. We've got a lot of exciting things up here, and we actually, our mayor in Gadsden is a former legislator that I served with, and he's turned out to be one of the best mayors we've ever had.
Speaking of Gadsden, and correct me if my numbers are wrong here, but I remember at one time Gadsden was like, I think the fifth largest city in the state and had like 60,000 people, and now it's down to like
Uh,
29.
I
Do you
think
ever?
I think it was over 70, and I think now we're in the 33, 34,000.
Okay.
But in 1974, I was 11, and downtown Gadsden was my paper route. I actually delivered to the mayor and I mean all the businesses downtown, and we had buses and taxis, and there was a lot of traffic. Etowah County has stayed pretty stable, but Gadsden has lost population, but that's actually changing. We're having people move back. We're having growth. There's a lot more opportunity, a lot more optimism that has not been here in a long time. And if you come up
Well,
here
what
and
exactly is driving that growth after the steel closed, and or not steel, a
yeah,
Goodyear?
we lost the steel plant and lost the rubber plant. Goodyear left.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to give credit to the mayor and council of Gadsden as being the number one catalyst for this. Just the economic outlook has changed. The At least publicly, we're not seeing any fights. Gadsden's the largest city in our county. Rainbow City has got a ton going on. Atala's got a lot going on. To me, the number one indicator of a healthy economy is construction. Gadsden has got construction everywhere. But, when your cities or your counties or your states do projects, that's investments. And we are investing huge up here into my district, which I'm thrilled about. Are you all aware of the Challenger Center?
No.
Which Challenger Center, you literally within a 2-hour radius of Rainbow City, Alabama, you'll get on a school bus and you will come to Rainbow City to the Challenger Center. And our legislature helps fund this. A lot of we've got former president of the college, former dean of the college, a lot of the community members that formed a board to file this. The Speaker of the House came to our meeting that we had. In the legislature, we were able to get a large amount of money for it, but you will basically come here, spend the day, and you will run a space program. I want to go do it. Sounds exciting, but
Yeah.
this is to promote STEM jobs. And it's so exciting. We've got the new advanced, manufacturing center here, workforce development at Gadsden State. Gadsden State is growing by leaps and bounds. Student enrollment is through the roof. So we're seeing so many things like this happen, and it's all happening at one time. So there's such excitement and activity here. But yes, Gadsden was in decline for decades, but we are no longer in decline. Etowah County is not in decline. We are actually growing. And and you've got to have, economic opportunities for our young people so they'll stay or that they will move back. And we are seeing that take place right now. We are preparing these people for the jobs of today. The I'm a product of the career tech training. In my day, it's called vocational school. But it's like we need AP plumbers and advanced placement electricians, welders, carpenters, truck drivers. Everything has changed. The technology. Look at the light bulbs you're putting in your house now. They're so different. The lighting controls. You got toilets that flush, automatically. There's just the technology is changing so fast, and we need the best and the brightest, and we need to prepare these students for such.
We've had several of these data centers, either begin construction or talk about construction. I think there's one going up in Bessemer, there's one going up south of Montgomery,
Right.
and these things are just they use a huge,
They consume a lot of energy.
a lot of energy and a bunch of water, believe it or not.
Yes.
And then, they want to use solar panels to power the things, and that takes up thousands of acres. Is there
Yes.
is there getting to be a little bit of a pushback against some of these things in the legislature?
I'm not seeing that yet, but I guarantee when solar farms start popping up, you will see a pushback because they're not very attractive. I've seen them, in traveling to other states. Um, we are blessed here that with our rivers and the hydroelectric generation, but I just believe we're going to have to start looking at nuclear power. Nuclear power is clean, it's safe. We're going to have to start looking at that. There were nuclear power plants built right here that were never put online. Bellefonte nuclear power plant's one that comes to mind right now up in Scottsboro that was never put online. But we've got to look at that, and I think that's an easy way to take care of our energy needs.
And speaking of the rivers, top of the river, is it still open?
It is, and hey, when you talk top of the river, that is the Sharp family. Kay and Bill Sharp own that. That is our son-in-law's family. Our daughter married their son.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so we it's funny, we've known the Sharps forever. Our kids were friends growing up. Our daughter helped their son get a job in Austin, Texas. And our daughter was living in Nashville. And it's funny, during COVID, we were at the beach. We couldn't rent our condo, so we were down there. And the same thing, everything was shut down. So the Sharps were down there. And Morgan just mentioned that Chad was coming over, going to spend the day with her, and a love affair began that day. But he lived in Austin, and she lived in Nashville, and we're excited that not only do we have a beautiful grandson named after both grandfathers, his name is Mack William, but we have our second grandchild on the way, and they had relocated to Chattanooga and were working there, and they've come back home. Chad has joined his dad in the business, and Morgan is a full-time stay-at-home mommy. So the top of the river is one of our absolute favorite places to eat. And we never
Oh,
knew
yeah.
that they would be family one day. But granddad, had them all. Chad's dad owns Gunnersville and Gadsden. Brother-in-law owns Anniston, and a cousin owns the one in Tennessee. But it's funny, everywhere I go, people, when I say I'm from Gadsden, they talk about top of the river. Their food is incredible. Their cornbread, their coleslaw.
Oh, yeah.
But it's funny, that you bring that up because we love the Sharp family, and now they're part of our family.
I know Tommy Tuberville has a couple of Republican opponents, and Doug Jones is running over the Democrat side. And there's like Will Boyd and Yolanda Flowers as a folks, but I think most political analysts would think that Tuberville's probably going to be the next governor.
I personally would go ahead and call him governor elect. Tom Taylor. Yeah, yeah.
Kim
Coach,
McPheeter's
Coach
going to
is
get mad about that.
yeah, Coach is absolutely going to be our next governor.
How ready is the legislature to help him draft whatever his legislative agenda is going to be?
We are sitting on go. I think a lot of us are so excited about Coach Tuberville coming. I think he's a lot like Donald Trump. I think he's going to combat fraud, waste, and abuse, and I think we're going to move at lightning speed. And I wouldn't be surprised if he calls us into session multiple times a year. but yes, I'm ready to go. I signed up to work for the people of my district, and I'm excited to to work with him. We've been a fan of his ever since we met him, and uh, he's been dynamic in the Senate. So I think he is going to be truly one of our best governors ever.
Now, let me ask this, Representative Butler, and I don't know if this is something you want to comment on, but I've seen a lot of representatives start making endorsements in the lieutenant governor's race. What do you think about people getting involved in other races?
It's something that happens. As a politico, man, we love endorsements. The my first race was in the school board in 2002, and I served 10 years on the school board. And then I got recruited to run for the legislature and did. So, yeah, we all love to have people endorse us and back us. And it, I think it makes a difference, to have people, because you're putting your credibility on the line, because everybody has a following. So I do think that's important, in any race to have endorsements.
Representative Butler, we've had you on for almost 45 minutes. I guess
Well,
that's all I have. Is there anything you'd like to add before we go?
hey, I appreciate you guys having me. Pray for America, pray for Alabama. I'm so thankful myself for grace and mercy. This nation, from its very inception, from the Mayflower Compact, you couldn't get off the boat till you signed it. It literally said, they came in the name of Christ for the discipleship of Christ. We were founded as a Christian nation. And I just like to remind people of that every chance I get. By a vote of the Congress in 1800, our U.S. Capitol was used as a church. It was the largest church in the nation. Every president from Jefferson to Lincoln attended church at the U.S. Capitol. And I'm amazed that nobody knows that. The faith of our founding fathers is carved in stone all over D.C. And you literally go to the Liberty Bell. Nobody knows why it's called the Liberty Bell, but it's because Leviticus 25:10 is engraved in the side that says, "Proclaim liberty throughout the world and all the inhabitants thereof." This nation is incredible. It's special. Our first president was literally bulletproof. God's hand was on him. He knew God's hand was on him. He was shot multiple times. His clothes were pierced with bullets. Bullet fragments were in his hair. Horses were shot out from under him. But he was never injured in battle. And I just like to remind people that every chance, pray for this amazing country and its people. And I'm just so proud to be from the state of Alabama.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you guys
Thank you
for
so
having me.
much for being on.